Welcome to the webinar workshop for the Nerds of the North and First in Alaska. This is an FTC workshop working on how to run an online team. So this is the FTC workshop brought to you by First in Alaska and the Nerds of the North. We're going to quickly go over some rules and what we're going to be doing today. So the topics that we're going to be working on today. So the synopsis of tonight is, how on earth can we effectively run a robotics team when we cannot meet face-to-face? What types of tasks can a team really accomplish isolated from one another? And what are some practical tools and resources we can use to make this happen? In this workshop, you will learn how to effectively manage and participate in virtual meetings, tips from teams, including individuals who have been participating in virtual meetings for quite a while, even before the pandemic. So the topics that we're going to be covering today: how to schedule and structure online teams, tips for participating in virtual meetings, how to build robots virtual, keeping members engaged, and tools for staying connected. And then we'll have a Q&A. So if you have questions, make sure to put them in the chat. You can do it to the @everyone chat. So yeah. And then I'll read them, and if they're applicable at the time, I will present them to our panelists. So how to run an online team. Please have your microphones muted. We're accepting questions through the chat, and we don't want people butting in. So yeah, and then put questions in the chat. So our first presenter, I'd like her to introduce herself, Zoe. She's on FRC team 568.
Hi, I'm Zoe. I've been participating in FIRST since I was about 9, so quite a few years. I'm on FRC team 568, but a couple years ago, I was also on FTC team 10616 Robodidactic. I've been a virtual participant for the last 2 years on the FRC team.
Next up, we have Lawton Skyling. Sorry for butchering your last name. He is on FRC team 568 and FTC team 3208.
Yeah, thanks, Benjamin. You got my name right. But yeah, so I'm the president of FRC team 568 and the team captain of FTC team 3208. Both teams have been meeting virtually about a week. In fact, FRC's been meeting multiple times a week since April. And so through my leadership of both those, I think I've gained a fair bit of knowledge in how to effectively lead when meeting completely virtually.
Our next panelist is Joshua Bell. He is a FIRST alumni and a mentor of FRC 568 Nerds of the North and FTC 5223.
Hi, I'm Josh. I've been doing FIRST for like a long time. I started in kindergarten with Roach doing junior FLO, and since then I've been all the way up through FRC president last year. Currently I'm going to school at University of Waterloo. We're doing lots of virtual things, so using Zoom, Teams, and all sorts of software like that where we can use virtually. Yeah, that's about it.
Next, we have Jane, a FIRST alumni.
Hey guys, I'm Janie. Yeah, I was a part of FLL in junior high, and in high school I was actually a virtual member of the FTC team Sun Chasers for at least a season, maybe a season and a half. So I definitely feel for you all, and but also know that it's completely doable and it's been done before. So I'm going to college at Biola University in California virtually right now, and I'm studying to become a teacher, so that's me.
Okay, next up we have I am terrible at names. Sorry. Gary Betts.
Hey, I'm Gray. I use they, them, theirs pronouns. I'm an alumni of First. I was on the same team with Janie, with the Sun Chasers. I just graduated with a BA in physics from Carleton College, and I'm currently serving with AmeriCorps in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. And I do a lot of like a virtual tech literacy instruction, working with adults and with youth as well, and young adults. And we're doing a lot right now with FLL and virtual teams that way. And yeah.
Next up, we have Wade Roach. He is a coach for FRC 568 Nerds of the North, and he is an FTC coach at Diamond.
Hey everybody, as much as I've been disturbed by the pandemic and all the life events that have been canceled or disrupted, I see the value of forcing our teams to learn how to solve problems without being in the same room. Physically moving matter is a costly endeavor, so how can we leverage our technology to provide the experience of being together while staying remote? Programmers do it, more firms are taking advantage of remote workers, and our teams will get an opportunity to try this out this year. I look forward to competitions that every team from Alaska will be able to attend, even if they are hundreds of miles apart.
Next, we have Vicky I'm sorry, I'm awful at names. She is a former FLL coach and former FTC coach, first volunteer FRC coach, and works for UAA.
Thank you, Ben. So I have actually coached Janie and Gray, who are on the call as part of the Sun Chaser alumni, and also I'm a current coach of the FRC team. I've been involved with First going on 14 years soon, and within the various volunteer roles have been lucky enough to be involved with teams that have had remote members. So pre-pandemic, already looking at unique models for how to get more collaboration between individuals where there may not be population density to have and support a full team right there. So I think a lot of the experience that alumni on that team or current members of teams with this model have a lot of relevant experience that now can transfer to teams who find themselves all remote. Overnight, we all became remote. So I hope all of our expertise today can help kind of collaborate.
All right, now that you've met our panel, I'll quickly introduce myself. My name is Benjamin Moisen. I am on West, FTC, and FRC 568 Nerds of the North. And I just joined. I'm a freshman, and I'm super excited about First. I have done FLL for a while, and last year my team was fortunate enough to win the state championship for FLL. So, moving on to our first topic, I'd just like to remind everybody that you can post your questions in the chat. If they're relevant, I will attempt to address them during the panel discussion. And our first panel discussion is how to structure and schedule virtual meetings. First, I'd like to call on Vicky to talk about some things that you might want to use.
Well, I had two things, two tools, practical tools that our team used a couple of times, different seasons, and that would be Google Suite. We used Google Calendars, Google Docs, and lots of Google Apps. And I think one tip that I have there is that we kept a generic team email or Google account so that it helps with the transfer of information from season to season. So using a Google Calendar there to keep track of meeting times, but also outreach opportunities or even workshops like this. And then using Google Docs so that onboarding new team members gave instant access to old information as well. So that's something that I think the FTC and FRC team have benefited from. Just a small logistic comment there.
All right, thank you, Vicky. We move on to Lawton.
Yeah, so I think I've observed a few things from the FRC team that I think are important to no one's scheduling a meeting, the most important of which is to have basically weekly meetings. So every week you have a dedicated time which repeats week after week. I know some weeks in FRC, the meeting is as simple as saying hi, checking in on various sub-departments, and then leaving. But just the repetitiveness of it gives a lot of people kind of more structure and making sure they know when to meet. Even like twice a week meetings, I know there's a lot of people who will flake out because they don't remember which weeks they're meeting. So definitely a lot of value in having every week meetings, or perhaps even like twice a week or 3 times a week. And then also having an agenda. So when you create a meeting, being sure you know what the meeting is going to cover. So if it's some build problem you have, not just like in the mind of some person, but actually written down for everyone to see what the topic of the meeting is. So it's not just rambling on about this and that. I know in the way FRC does it, we have it split up into kind of 3 different sections. We have the announcements, which will be stuff like, most recently, we are scheduling a FTC workshop. If anyone wants to join us, let me know. And then we have action items, which could be something like, we need 3 FRC members to join this FTC workshop. I'll wait right now as you sign up. And then you have kind of a to-do list at the bottom of things that's going to carry on from that meeting to do before the next meeting. So yeah, I guess my 2 big: consistency of meetings, and then an agenda that you know exactly what you're going to present.
Okay, we move on to Jane.
Yeah, I think I mostly had just some ideas about how to structure your actual meeting that you're having. So on my team, we used the engineering notebook actually to schedule our agenda. So at the end of each meeting, we would kind of have a little update on what needed to be done next, and at the next meeting kind of. And so we were able to, at the beginning of each particular meeting, set our agenda based on what we had decided needed to be done the last meeting. So that kind of just gives you a little structure. Yeah, and if you set like 10 minutes at the beginning of a meeting to just delegate tasks, that can also be very helpful and give each team member structure as to how they'll be able to use their time efficiently. Yeah, I think that's all I had.
Okay, would any other panelists like to make a quick comment?
Were there other scheduling, I think other scheduling software that other panelists were interested in speaking to?
I guess I've got a few which we can outline later, but TeamSnap is one that I know Diamond has used, as well as Discord or some chat. But we can cover the like pros and cons of those. We have a slide later on for that.
I guess I had a follow-up to both team structures. Something that I think really helps with the scheduling and structure of the meetings is the fact that they've identified their tasks as part of their like meaningful tasks they've identified to accomplish during those meetings. And I think that's even more important in this virtual environment. When you're in a room together and you say, oh, we're going to go work on build, and you go and look at your robot, it's a lot more natural to come up with a list of things to do. But when you're actually getting ready in a Zoom structure like this to break into breakout groups to accomplish the task, I think it's really meaningful to have a time to set an agenda and be more specific and deliberate about what the tasks are you're accomplishing in those breakout times.
Okay, let's move on to the next topic. The next topic is tips for participating in virtual meetings. I'd just like to note that you are allowed to add questions in the chat, so make sure you have some questions in the chat so we can address questions. And let's jump right in with Zoe.
Okay, so I've been participating in virtual meetings for quite a while. Our team typically uses Zoom, and there are lots of different software you can use, like Google Meet. Zoom's just the easiest for us. A nice thing about that is you can have breakout rooms, like Vicky already mentioned, so that you can have people in, for our team, we do business, and you can have people specifically working on business. Another thing we use is a lot of Google Sheets, so everyone can see the meeting notes and be working on the same documents. And I believe that's all I have for now.
Okay, the next person I'd like to call on is Jane. Could you please quickly say your proper pronunciation of your name when you
Sure. Yeah, it's Janie. No worries. I respond to Jane as well. Yeah, I think I just wanted to just mention, basic Zoom etiquette. You're all professionals at this by now. Just keeping your camera on during a meeting when we're all talking. It's just so much easier to just connect with people when you can actually see their face, and being mindful about when to have your mic on and off. If there's like loud background noise, maybe just turn the mic off in that moment. But yeah, just basic stuff that you all know, and that just helps to have a smoother meeting.
Is there any other panelists that would like to add comment?
I guess I had a thought real quick. I know when I've been leading meetings, it's always tough, especially in larger meetings, perhaps not so much in small FTC meetings. But when you pose a question, if it's kind of just an open-ended question, like, how's everyone doing? That's like kind of the cliche one, is basically dead silence or maybe a nod. So I think usually either having yes or no, and it's like go into the participants tab and say yes or no, or if you pose it as like, Benjamin, how you doing? Something like that. Just a way to make sure they know who it's directed to. So it's not just these awkward open-ended questions that nobody responds to.
Okay. If there's no further comment from the panelists, we can move on. Or any questions? Does anyone have questions? Okay. Seeing no questions, we can move on. How to build when virtual. So first I'd like to call on Lawton.
Yeah, so my big takeaway is learn 3D modeling. I've been doing 3D modeling since 7th or 8th grade, even before the pandemic when we were free to like build and just like make cool stuff by hand. We basically always had a 3D model going ahead of time. And now during the pandemic, it's just that much more essential because, well, you can't build in person. There's a lot of great tools for how you can 3D model and not in person, but 3D model virtually so that everyone can stay connected in what the robot's gonna look like. And beyond that, it just makes it so much easier to construct the actual bot with a 3D model. So I could talk a little bit about the software we use. My team uses Fusion 360, which is free to students and educators. And it's really great because it's not quite like Google Docs in that not two people can be editing it at the same time and see live, but you can have a shared folder that includes everyone on the team and everyone can have their own bot, or they can one at a time go in and edit each other's bots. And there's even some super neat features like if you don't want to learn how to 3D model, there's still a web browser, so you can spin around the model and you can like pin a point and add a comment so students who aren't quite as adept could still voice their opinions on designing. And then I think going off that a little more, some fabrication stuff like 3D printers are great to have. Obviously, it's a little bit cost prohibitive, but they've gotten pretty cheap now. And to be able to transition from a 3D model to a 3D print has so many great applications in 3D printing. And I think quite a few schools at this point, especially if schools aren't in person, they have 3D printers just lying around. So if you can get in contact with someone who has those, it really is quite indisposable in FTC. And then another thing which my team has yet to do, but I guess I just have kind of a hunch that this is the way things are going to go, is to be sure to distribute supplies. So I know a lot of teams, if you're working by a single kit, even if it can be like you split the kit in half and you have 2 people with it and you pass it around, it really is poor to have just one person with the kit the whole season who builds, even if it's from like a 3D model everyone comes up with, because there's nothing quite like having the hands-on experience. And then finally is asking the teams around you. So I know, like, especially in Anchorage, I'm sure it'd be almost as easy for me to drop stuff off at one of my own teammates' houses as it would be to drop it off at like Ben's house. So if you need supplies, be sure to reach out to other teams. Many of them are happy to provide it.
Lawton, we had a quick question from the audience to just clarify collaboration in Fusion 360. So you cannot, or please elaborate on the collaboration.
Yeah, so kind of, it looks like Josh explained it well. Fusion is cloud-based, which is why so much of this stuff works. So it's very close to like what I'd hope a 3D modeling software would be, in that I can build a design, I can save it, and then someone else at a different computer with a different account can log on to that and see the model. And just the one issue is that when you have 2 people working on the same model at the same time, it has saving conflicts. It's not like it updates right away. But I know in FRC, we've had some design projects with multiple people working on a CAD model. And if you just split into sub-assemblies, so we'll have like the intake and the drive base, and one person will work on each of those. It is quite easy to get across. And I encourage you to check out in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I believe. We've got the 3D modeling workshop where we'll go really in depth into all the ins and outs of that.
Okay, calling on our next panelist, Zoe, for further comment on how to build Win Virtual.
So our team is actually doing a project right now that has been fabricated. It's not completely done yet, but it's been completely during the pandemic. I actually have some of the pieces right now. So we ship it from person to person. I think Lawton had it first, and then another teammate has part of it now. So definitely split it up to smaller pieces so people can work on different things at the same time. And I like mailing stuff. That way you don't have to worry about the actual germs on from handing it off. But 3D modeling is definitely a good thing to have at all times.
All right, thank you. Hopefully I get your name right. Janie, for further comment on how to build Win Virtual.
Perfect. Thank you, Benjamin. Yeah, just going off of that, what Zoe said, just I'd really emphasize to make sure you're communicating really well with your team about what supplies you might need for a certain task, or how you're going to distribute it or mail it, or just make sure to have, you can't have too much communication in that case, and a lot of patience, because yeah, it'll take more time than usual, and that's okay. With some extra communication, it'll all work out. And I think I also wanted to just have a quick note on programming. I'm not sure if we'll touch on that later, but if you're programming, when you're programming virtual, it's connected to building. So my team actually had one person writing the program. Like, I'd usually write the program and then send it to the rest of my teammates who had the actual robot, and then they would have the camera on the robot as they tested out the program, and then we'd kind of collaborate on how to adjust the program, maybe how to adjust the robot design in some way, and then we just repeat the process. So we found that that was a very helpful way to program and adjust designs through virtual meetings. So yeah, a lot of communication necessary.
All right, thank you, Janie. Finally got the name right. Next, for comment on how to build when virtual, Matthew.
Unfortunately, Matthew wasn't able to join us today.
Okay, do any other panelists have further comment on how to build when virtual?
If I may jump in for a moment, building off of some of the points that Janie proposed, one thing I would like to note, make sure you're documenting your dimensions like really well, because it's going to be really helpful when it comes to sending your robot somewhere else and rebuilding. So just making sure that you're keeping that up to date and current. It might be helpful to have like a list of a shared list with dimensions of like pieces that you're using to build and whatnot. The other thing I wanted to quickly mention on the coding, there is a website. I'm not sure if it's currently free at the moment, but it was for about a month ago, where you can virtually like have like a simulation where you run your code on a virtual robot. It's called Coder Z. So that's an option. I haven't played around with it very much, so just as a, that's there.
Do any other panelists have any further comment on how to build when virtual? Or are there any more questions?
I guess I just wanted to put a plug in there for a future session as well, and that's the project management tools and resources. So a lot of the references to like documenting it would come back to the engineering notebook session or project management resource sessions that are being offered in the future. So those are kind of going a bit deeper into topics of how to like manage all the nuts and bolts, both the analogy kind or the real kind, where of managing a team when you do have robot components in different people's hands in different places, or subtasks within a build project designated to different individuals, and keeping track of that. And I also just want one other thing would be that I think this is awesome that it's forcing team members to do what I think is a lot more standard, like real world scenarios, and that you're not just an isolated individual who owns all the programming and all the, without in a bubble without communicating with others, or that you're always sitting down around a project working together in the same space. So I think that what you guys are facing this year is very applicable. It's a real world challenge, a real world skill, and you're going to come out of this with a great resume builder right there. So it's a good challenge.
All right, we are moving on to our next topic. If we don't have any further comment, do we have any further comment? Okay, seeing no further comment, we'll be moving on to our next topic. Our next topic is keeping members engaged. I would like to encourage the audience to add questions to the chat. It helps add to the discussion, and if you have the question, somebody else probably does, so please just say it. I'd like to quickly call on Mr. Roach.
Thanks, Ben. And I'll just kind of introduce this idea and then pass it on to our teammates that have actually been remote and doing these things. The biggest thing I can see about keeping members engaged is forming a personal relationship with them as being part of the team, especially when they're remote. With our FRC team, our remote people were basically in Fairbanks, when we were working in Anchorage. And even some of our remote team members were in Alaska when we were competing down in Washington and Oregon. And so having them engage directly with what's going on with the team involves basically moving around with them while holding a screen and showing them the action and then talking to them back and forth in order to make them feel like they're there. It is quite intensive on you basically got a 1-to-1 ratio for the people that you're dealing with. But what we found in the past with mentorship is that really it almost is a 2-to-1 ratio. One mentor to every 2 students is probably the best ratio. So building that personal relationship so they feel like they're part of the team. And so I'll pass it on to Zoe, who was one of the remote members that I carried around on a FaceTime video down at the competition.
And once you dropped me. But definitely make sure that they feel like they're part of the team, especially if you have shy members. Like I can be somewhat shy. Then if you don't know them, they're going to have ideas and they're not going to tell you. But another thing is make sure everyone has a purpose. So you have someone manufacturing a lift mechanism, and then they can show you that, and someone who's manufacturing the drive base can show them that, and they can both feel like they're contributing to the team, even though they're not actively together.
All right, next up we have Vicky for comment on keeping members engaged.
Oh, I just deleted my name. You didn't see that, huh? I'll pass. I think Roach already touched on it. I'm good.
Okay. Next up we have Josh for keeping members engaged.
So really what I've learned over the time for keeping members engaged online is that you kind of need something to do. There's been many times when you can just kind of find yourself behind the screen and just turn off your camera and start messing on your phone, or you pull up a browser and start playing a video game of some sort. It's really easy to get lost. So especially just having everyone have something to do, not just saying, okay, go work now, and then everyone goes their own thing. It's nice to also be able to talk while you're working, because when you're in the lab, you're not just dead silent, you're kind of talking, communicating while you're doing different stuff. As well, it's always nice at the end of the day to just kind of do something that kind of gets everyone together and kind of plays the games. There's lots of kind of games online if everyone's not included. So like the end of the meeting, there's like Pinterello and a bunch of different games you can play online that are all kind of group games and builds team spirit, and does lots of stuff where if you normally see each other every day at school or just come over to each other's house and work after school for stuff, you always have that kind of team bonding, which is really hard to do virtually when you can't see each other's faces and interact with each other as well. There's just lots of games online. I think if you just search multiplayer games on Google, it'll come up with a million things. Besides that is like team attendance. For smaller teams, it might not be much of attendance, just if someone doesn't show up, send them a text, hey, what are you doing? Are you able to join the meeting? Are you busy right now? What you've been doing? And kind of communicate outside of the meetings as well, because it really helps when everyone's involved during the meetings and not, because then you have that much more kind of, I'm not sure how to describe this, but like teamwork that is just engaged on all levels. So when someone's not there, it's generally like, hey, where'd they go? Not, oh, we need him to go do this for us. It's the kind of like compassion and teamwork that comes with it.
All right, thank you for your comments. I'd like to quickly just post the link in the chat for the JEDC website for the webinars and workshops. Definitely check out that website for future webinars and workshops. We'll be hosting some more of these in the weeks to come, so definitely check that out. Now I open it to the rest of the panel to discuss keeping members engaged.
I guess elaborating on what Roach and Zoe were talking about, theirs was more focused on when most people are in person, but there's some online members. I think when you're completely virtual, a lot of the things will apply about keeping people interested, like having purpose. I know I actually just got off a meeting with my FTC team, and we've been together for like 5 years, and most of the meeting was spent chatting about like school. But I can imagine if you're a team of new members, that's not something you'll do. For most people are still, they're not good friends with the rest of their team. So definitely kind of going off what Josh was saying, not just focusing on robotics, but focusing on the kind of group collaboration. Like one thing we did in FRC is, it was called scribble.io. It was like Pictionary online. Something like that. Like I can remember in person for FRC, like being honest, one of the best team bonding things was Cards Against Humanity with the team. Probably not that specifically, but just something that isn't robotics related, that's just fun and can get members connected and get you to the point where you can have an hour-long chat about schoolwork and just forming friendships, I guess. Definitely important during this online time, especially.
All right, do any other panelists have any further comment? Okay, seeing no further comment, I'd like to just quickly re-mention the post in the chat about the JEDC website in First in Alaska. Make sure to check that out, look at the future workshops, and look at what other workshops you'd like to attend. Moving on to our next topic, tools for meetings / staying connected. All right, so first we have Lawton to talk about tools for meetings / staying connected.
Yeah, this is always a fun topic for me because I'm kind of like the type of guy who'll find a website with like a list of new software companies and sign up for like 10 different software platforms. But yeah, there's like, especially during this time, but just in general, so much was shifting online. There's been just an insane number of applications that are meant for exactly what robotics students are doing, trying to stay connected. And so a few that I'd like to touch on, the first is called Trello, which Ben actually hooked me up with, but it's, actually, maybe I could, would you mind if I share my screen, Ben? It might be easier to visualize it.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So I'm still pretty new to this, but the way it works is you have what are called boards. So I can create a new one. Let's have one called programming. We can call this build team. And it's pretty open-ended how you structure this. But then you basically have titles of lists. So this could be, actually maybe a better example is what I had in the previous one, programming. I had a to-do, doing, and done. So we can say like add sensors. And then you have these cards that you can assign to people if you have a group of students. Right now I'm just an individual member, and a lot of features which may or may not be useful. But it's just a great way to visualize kind of what needs to get done. And especially when you're online and communication is such a big deal, staying connected. And then the next one that's near and dear to my heart is Slack. So this is, I'm guessing most people have heard of it. It was kind of oriented towards, well, obviously I hope all of you have since you saw the advertisement, but it's oriented more towards businesses and like it's supposed to replace email as the communication. But as you can see, I've got like so many clubs who use Slack as well. And so you have these kind of channels and then each one has some discussion. And just within a team, it can be a great way to facilitate communication. A lot of the features won't be necessary, but yeah, it definitely got a lot of communication. And I'll make a plug for the First in Alaska one. If you haven't already seen, when you sign in, you can select FTC students and then it pairs you with the team that you're assigned to. So like I'm on FTC 3208 and you can see we've had some discussion. So definitely, if you have nothing yet, the Slack built into First in Alaska is a great way to get started. But you can also create your own Slack channel for free. And then the next one is Zoom, which obviously all of you heard of. I don't think there's much explanation. But that, as well as Google Hangouts, are two great ways to facilitate team communication. I know that if you're an ASD student, by signing in with your ASD email, you get, I guess, some like more premium features. But even just if you have your own account, they're pretty lenient with what you have access to. And then the last one, which I touched on already, is 3D modeling. So I brought up Fusion 360. There's also like SolidWorks, Inventor, PTC Creo. There's some ones that are just based on the web browser. But yeah, a lot of options there.
Okay, thank you so much, Lawton. Now we're moving on to Josh, and I will let him screen share.
All right, there. All right, so the first one I want to talk to you about is the Discord. So this is the FRC's Discord, and it's really nice because you have all these different, you have a main channel that different people can join. So I'm you like a water loan for my college and stuff like that. And when you join, you can have all these different channels. So you can go from information, like a welcome thing where it kind of just welcomes people, and you can have a pre-generated chat. Then you can have like communication where people talking, you can go through and like people. So you can leave a heart for a lot, and you can also go and leave like a customized FRC emoji and kind of have like different meetings and add different stuff like that. You can just call it an @ So Taylor said @Vicky, which means it sends a message specifically to Vicky and like alerts her specifically and does an individual thing just for her so that she knows to go look at your message. You can also do @everyone. So if it's important, like, hey, everyone, we need to do your bios or something for the engineering notebook, it'll send everyone that message, the notification. So this is really nice. And you can also have voice channels. So you can join a call and communicate with people through there as well. The next one I want to talk to you about, which is a little controversial because we're using Zoom, but is MS Teams. This is personally my favorite because I think it has a lot of features that Teams doesn't. So I'm part of one for my college, so I have math classes. So you can join your team and they have different chats and talking. People can go and communicate through here. You can also set up calls. So this was an office hour one my professors had set up, and it will record it for you so people can't join the meeting. You can have it recorded. They can easily just go and access it. You can also give assignments, which is not really limited. We can have a calendar set up. So it's really easy to just go and say, all right, we need a meeting this day, this day, this day, this day. We're gonna have an individual one set up for here. And it's really nice just to be able to look at the calendar and say, well, what do I have for robotics this week? Oh, right, I forgot. I have a meeting showing up in 10 minutes I need to go to, stuff like that. You have a description, whatever you want. And then there's also the chats, which kind of takes into apart some of the Discord stuff. But you can go through and join, like, there's no one really talks in this apparently, but you can go and communicate to people, and you can have all these different chats just like Discord does, where you have different themes for them. And it's really nice because all in one setting. So it's really easy to go and say, oh, don't forget about the meeting, go and link the meeting directly. So it's easy for them to go and find it. And you can share files on it, you can have voice calls, and there's a lot of other stuff you can link into it with like Word and stuff. The next one, let's see, it was TeamSnap. So this is my TeamSnap account. I'm technically still on the team for like TeamSnap stuff, but it makes it really easy to schedule meetings. So I haven't looked at these in a while, but I think it'll come up and say, you can also get this on your phone. So it makes it really easy where if we have a meeting coming up, it'll notify you like the day or the week, whatever you have it set to, that you have a meeting. You can also communicate through it. So it says here you can include the link. So I can click on the link and just join the call that is set up for today. Yeah, today. This call actually, wow. Yeah, it makes it really easy to kind of schedule meetings. And it's also a really great thing for when you're in person in the future because it makes it great for organizing that type of stuff. And then the last one, I'll stop sharing my screen now, is just general group chats. I mentioned earlier, it's really nice to have kind of the outside of the meeting communication with people and just a simple group chat on your phone. And if there are people who have like Samsung phones and Apple, that can cause a little bit of problems. I know WhatsApp is actually a really good app for that because it lets you communicate and do that really easily and without any problems. My one recommendation though is that you make 2 and designate one for like actual team talk and then one for just kind of socializing. Because personally, it can get really annoying when you all of a sudden open your phone and you have 200 messages about random stuff that is not really talking to you, and you're scrolling through it trying to figure out what is important for you to know. So that's just one thing that's kind of, it's subtle, but it's nice to have, or helps keep you more in focus for some points. I think that's it for the just staying connected for me though.
All right, thank you so much. Let me get the presentation back up. All right, so if there's any further comments from the panelists.
I guess just one more thing, kind of to summarize what Josh and I were talking about. It was a lot to throw at you with like 10 different pieces of software, but I think you can kind of distill it down to 3 different subjects, which is good for basically universally any team, which is a synchronous communication method. So something like Zoom or Google Hangouts, where it's face-to-face, kind of like a phone call, so you're talking to each other one-on-one. And then there's asynchronous communication, so something like Slack, like Trello, a group chat. I know at one point my team even had just a Google Instagram DM, or sorry, an Instagram like group chat where we DM each other. Don't recommend that so much, but just some asynchronous way to communicate. And then finally, a scheduling platform to make sure that students know when a meeting is and how to log on to a meeting. And any of these you can look up on your own, like Silicon Valley is bustling with different tech companies with new ideas of how these are supposed to like show up.
All right, thank you very much, our esteemed panelists. Do we have any further comment? Okay, seeing no further comment, we're moving on to the fancy, awesome next section, audience Q&A. So, audience, please put your questions in the chat. So, yeah, I will read them off to our esteemed panelists. Okay, so our first question is, what is the difference between Discord and Slack? Which is better for FTC?
I guess I can jump on that one because I was part of the debate in FRC of which to choose. But I've had a lot of experience with both, and it's really tough to say. They're so similar in what they do. I can say the nice thing with Discord is that Discord is kind of a gaming chat. So like I can see when Roach is playing his video games at 2 a.m. But maybe that's a good thing. I mean, if your team really wants to socialize, which like you said is a good thing, it's nice to have, and so many teams have it. I think just about everyone you'll ask has heard of Discord. And then Discord also has a nice chat feature. So like Josh was mentioning, you can do audio chats and you can do even like video or screen sharing. And kind of similar with Slack, they do have that as well. I want to say it's a premium feature though. But one of the other things with Slack is that it has a lot of integrations. So if you have like a GitHub page, it'll give you notifications every time someone updates the code. Or if you're using like Trello, it can integrate to show you the calendar. So it's kind of up to you. I think if your team's just getting started, you don't need anything fancy, then Discord's probably the way to go. Unless you want to use like the pre-made Slack that First and Alaska has, because that's so easy to set up.
I just want a quick disclaimer. I just want to say I'm on Team Discord. I think it has a lot of good features, and you can get bots for GitHub and other things. So anyway, any further questions? Make sure to put them in the chat. Our next question is, what do you do if one member takes over most of the building? Would any esteemed panelist like to comment?
I could address that a little bit. So, I mean, when you have someone that is just taking on everything, one of the things is to limit the number of parts that they can get a hold of. So that's the first thing. So you say like, oh, you can only have, this many things. The other thing is to have them provide you with a blueprint or some kind of diagram of what they want to build before they're allowed to build anything. And so that basically slows them down a little bit, allows other people to kind of catch up if you have one person doing it. if you have someone that is just so far along and you want to leverage their ability to pass on to other people, then you need to give them some rule that they follow that prevents them from manipulating the robot. Like they have a protege, a Padawan underneath them that they work with, and you put oven mitts on them or you tape their hands together or something so that they can't actually do anything and they have to talk to that other person and explain how to do it. You got to remember that sometimes that doesn't work with their personality, but those are things that you can try.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Roach.
Mind if I
if-
chime in on that too, Benjamin?
Oh, my apologies. Go ahead.
That's right. I just wanted to follow up also that I think this season is unique in that it could accidentally lend itself even more so to that because you're socially distanced. So the problem is accentuated even more, right? Because it seems that it seems natural that, oh, one person can build a robot in one location. So I think this is a great season to really put more emphasis on the design ahead of time and the planning. I would like to once again say, look into some project management tools. And if you put more emphasis on the design process ahead of time and can then break it into subsystems and delegate out tasks, that's one way that you can also then make sure that the build is distributed among team members and different people are assigned to different build. And then you can limit the materials because they have the materials specific to what's been designed and thought through for that specific component.
Yeah, I'd like to add another thing too, and I don't want to monopolize, but based on what we did kind of with the avatar where we took some things and sent them to another person, you can also do teardowns. We've done this before where someone builds a robot and then before you can progress and do anything more, you give it to another person and they have to tear it down and rebuild it. We've done that with drivetrains a lot in the FRC team, things like that to make sure kids know how to use things and they learn how to do them.
All right. Thank you very much. Make sure to put your questions in the chat. We are definitely accepting questions and all further questions are appreciated. Our next question is, what happens if you can't find time to meet?
I guess my team has had some. Did you have something to say, Greg, before I jump in? No, okay. My team had kind of similar problems at the beginning of the season, just in that, especially when sports are going on, there's just so much time. There's so little overlap between times. And just only tough. It's tough to find a time everyone can meet. But I think going back to one of my first points, which was having a repeating meeting. So if you can establish just like one time that someone doesn't have repeating events, even if they have like a doctor's appointment one day, just having the consistency of having it every week. And hopefully at some point it begins to then bump up in the hierarchy of tasks above like some other club meeting or just something that, would make people motivated enough to join. And I think the hope is at the beginning of the season when things are going slowly, it's easier for people to say they can't make a meeting. But then when you're like weeks in and it's really intense, people are more motivated and more willing to find like the little nooks of time or push off other activities for it.
Another thing I'll add to that is documentation, because if you do have that one team member specifically who can't get to the certain meetings, if it's really easy for them to turn around and say, oh, I missed the meeting, what happened? And then you'll look at either the agenda and see, oh, this is what happened, or look at the recorded video and go watch the video and say, oh, I know exactly what happened. Stuff like that really helps where you can have that documentation of what actually did happen rather than just, oh yeah, we built the robot a little bit, we worked on the drivetrain, we did some outreach stuff. You really need to have more in-depth and like that type of summary. And just further point, if you do record a meeting, it just occurred to me, when you're working on the engineering notebook, some like a month later, you're like, oh crap, what was that one thing we said a month ago in our meeting? Oh, that's right, we have a video, we can go watch it and verbatim know exactly what happened to record it down if you forget to do that.
All right, thank you. And we have one final question. How do you establish leadership? Actually, we have two more questions, but to our esteemed panelists, how do you establish leadership?
Would you want to touch on that, Josh, since you did a lot for FRC last year?
Sure. I think that question is really hard to answer. It can really depend on kind of your team dynamic. If you do have that one person who kind of stands out, is the person like taking charge and shows up and is like, okay, what are we doing today? I think a general rule of thumb is to make them kind of the team manager, team leader, president, whatever you want to call it, captain. But I don't think it's the, okay, now I'm a dictator, I tell you what to do. I think from there, you really need to figure out what people want to work on. So if you have some people who are like really want to program, really want to build, it's better like, okay, you really want to program, don't put them into a building position, put them to programming. And then from there, even in like, if you have a smaller FTC team, I don't necessarily think it's best to have a head programmer, but I think it's better to say, all right, I am programming autonomous. You can program teleop. You can definitely collab and work with each other, but it's better to have someone who can go and say, all right, the teleop's not working. What's the status on the teleop? And they go, okay, they know everything about that. They're the, it's RACI, responsible. I can't remember off the top of my head, that's bad. But you need to have kind of that structure of who is in charge of this, who's responsible for this. When something's not working, who do you go to? And I think that can really occur naturally. And if it's not, it is something that kind of needs to be forced and say, we need someone to take control of this, who's going to volunteer. And that can be really hard sometimes if you don't have people willing to, or too many also that want to take into that role.
And I can guess, just a hunch, but the person who asked this, I'm guessing they have issues because it can be really awkward to designate leadership. Especially like, I know being a senior and it's so important for colleges to have like asserting yourself and being able to mandate like you're the leader to ask for an election. And so I think coaches are a great way to go through that, to have a coach either designate the team if students don't feel comfortable voting, or having a team vote of positions. I think also it can be a little dangerous to fall into the rabbit hole of having too many levels of hierarchy, especially in a small team. I know in like FRC, it's nice having a president and then like vice president, secretary, treasurer. But when you're 5 people, chances are you don't need the like programming sub-captain or the build secretary. But yeah, definitely establishing enough leadership that people know exactly when a task is supposed to be theirs, like the president is assumed to be responsible for like coordinating meetings, is definitely essential in having a team that can function and have productive meetings.
All right, thank you very much. We had one other question. When are these videos going to be, when is the workshop being available? A couple of days we should have it up and you guys can check it out. We'll, edit it down a little bit and have it up on our website, I believe. And so I'd also like to thank the panelists. If the panelists have any closing comments, those would be great.
Yeah, I guess no closing comments, but good luck to the rest of the teams, and thanks, Ben, for doing a great job moderating.
Thank you very much. If we don't have any closing comments, I'd like to quickly throw in a pitch for our upcoming workshops. We have a project management workshop on 10/14, a engineering documentation workshop on 10/21, and a 3D modeling workshop on 10/28. I'd like to thank everyone for coming, especially our panelists and everybody who's watching. Thank you very much.